Y'all check this out. This don't happen all the time. Chevrolet breaks a drive shaft and Ford pulls him home. Little Ranger doing work. Look at him. Josh back there. We're cruising about 55. Y'all see that right there? Tomorrow's Damien's birthday. He turns 18. Today, how much money did you make today off that car?
6,000 probably.
So you sold it for 8,300 and you have what, 2,300 in it?
Yeah.
So you made about $6,000 a day. Look at that smile. That's a $6,000 smile. Look at us. Hit it with us, Damien. Nice. He can't help it. He's shy because he's on camera, but he's smiling like crazy. So day 2, let's try this again. This time with a good drive shaft that didn't throw itself out. So take him off the shop, get the exhaust finished up on it, then get it home jaded and start driving around a little bit. I asked about how I align the front suspension of my car or race cars, how I do it. So here's how I do it. Let me get a floor jack real quick. I'm gonna show y'all something. All right, so first off, you need to jack the front of the car up to about where you think it's gonna be going down the track. So if you got limiters, you need to jack it up to where the limiter is, because you're not going down track with the suspension at ride height. Wherever the suspension is where you need to turn around and jack this thing up roughly. On here, since I got all this area, when you go up and it goes down, that wheel's gonna move around a little bit. Let me show you something. So the first thing I always do is bring these caster and camera plates all the way in and all the way back. That's just kind of like, they sell, Maximum Motorsports sells some lockouts that don't have adjustments. This is basically what they do. They move them in and all the way back. I come in here and I get the steering wheel straight. I'll take the steering wheel straight. A lot of times it helps if you have somebody that with you. And what I always come in here and do, I don't bring the measuring tapes out. Sometimes I will, but most of the time I don't. What I always do, I make sure the front of this contact patch here to this contact patch to that wheel is in line. You can close one eye. And what I do, you see, if you watch, when they touch, boom, you see how they all touch down through there? That to there, to there. That's what I do. I go through and jack it up to ride height, and I adjust it to where this to there meets where that tire is on the back side. And then I go to the other side to it. So if your wheel is in, you'll turn it out some. But when you turn it out, you're not going to go through and turn it to where it's level like this. What you have to do, you have to get somebody in the car and you have them turn the wheel. So basically what I'll do is, if I think it's about 1 inch out, I'll turn it 1/2 inch. Then I'll tell the person in the car, like the other day I had Caden, I'll say turn it left, turn it right, turn it back straight. So he'll turn it left, he'll turn it right, he'll turn it back straight. And that takes all the slack out of the front suspension for when you're driving. Because if you just adjust it right here with nobody helping you straight to it, when you move that wheel, it's going to be in or it's going to be out. All suspensions have some kind of play, some kind of variancy. So you have to accommodate for that. Nothing will ever be perfect. Nothing. I don't care who aligns it. It will never be dead on perfect. There will always be some kind of slack somewhere in the system that's going to have to overcome to make them drive good. So what I do, like I said, I'll make them go left, go right, go straight, and I see if it's still in line. If it ain't, I make an adjustment in, out, until I get this one all the way in the line, like that. And then I'll come over here to the other side, and I'll check my other wheel. And when I come over here and check my other wheel, I do the same thing. I lay down here on the floor, and I look here to there, to that back tire. See how it's close? It ain't gotta be perfect. And I do that every single kind. Any car, even the cars in my shop. I don't have an alignment machine, so any cars in my shop, I do the same thing to them, and I have for years. And then I take it to an alignment shop and get them to align it. That's how I get everything close. But on a race car, it don't matter. Like I said, you just make sure that, see if this wheel was in or out, then you're gonna turn it half the distance that you think it needs to be. Move the steering back and forth, go back through, check it again until you want it. When you move that wheel, you get the person inside the car to move this wheel left to right. And all they got to do, they ain't got to go much. They just got to go, come in here and go left, right, back straight. And that right there should put you dead on. And I'll show you. So when this car goes down, watch this. When it goes back down to ride height, if you look at this wheel, see how the front of this is hitting that tire before the back? This wheel is bowed out a little bit. Same thing with the other side. And that's because up and down the suspension, it will never be, even though this tie rod is at pretty much the same angle, it could be adjusted a little bit more, honestly. I could bring it down just a hair more. But with that, it'll never be exactly dead on. That wheel will always, sorry about that glare. That wheel will always move in and move out a little bit up and down. So you got to find a fine medium. So when it's all the way up, it might be towed in a little bit. When it's all the way down, it might be towed out a little bit. But I'm planning on being somewhere in the middle, going down the track. And that's what makes them drive straight. I've never had this car not drive straight, not drive good. And that's the way I've always done it. I've always done all my cars like that for years and years. And then sometimes I'll bring a measuring tape out and measure it just to see how close it is. But if it's good by my eyeballs, I'm cool with it. I never have an issue, like I said, and I've been pretty quick in this thing and never had a driving problem. The only time I ever had any kind of problem at all out of it was one time I forgot about my suspension adjustment. I strapped the front all the way down because it was wheeling. And when it took off, it went right because that wheel being kicked out on it. When I strapped that suspension tighter, you got to adjust for it. So if you have 4 inches of travel, 7, 10 inches of travel, however much travel you have, whatever you're setting your suspension at where you think ride height is, if you decide you're going to strap the front of the car down and tighten it up, well, when you tighten it up, you better eyeball them front wheels to make sure they're straight where you have it maxed out at. So get your jack out, jack it up. So if you go from 6 inches down to 2 inches of travel, or you go from 5 inches to no inches of travel in the front, then you got to make sure that you eyeball that wheel to wheel and back there. And that's why, like, I can go to track now, and if I adjust something, I adjust it on the fly, and I don't have no issues. But that's the way I always do it. Like I say, you take your caster and camber plates, move them back and down on both sides, and then you just eyeball your alignment, and that car will drive good. Where's your boss man at?
There he is. Oh, okay. Hello.
As well as Thanksgiving. So from my family to yours, happy Thanksgiving. We're here in the shop today. I ain't dropped y'all a video. I figured I'd go ahead and clean this. I got my old K1 crank over there. Figured I'd clean out around the edges in here. I hung some new lights up. My mom and them got these lights at Goodwill. So, and the bulbs were burning out on, or ballasts. So I went ahead and just hung those up in here so we could see when I'm recording these videos. So now I'm gonna go in here, get my cooler lines out of the way. I'm gonna finish sweeping all this trash up around the edges in here, clean the shop up. Let's start getting these cooler lines on today. Got to do cooler lines. I need to change the oil, the transmission fluid. Basically, I got to service the car. I still got to get this back off and get every nozzles and get that welded up for the brakes for the fuel cell. I got a cap for my fuel cell in the back or whatnot. I'm gonna cap it so I can put water in it. I still have weights over there that I got to hang under the back of the car. I also want to come over here and work on these lines. So the other day I was installing James Crawley's boost controller on him. He has a boost leash. And on the boost leash it says, do not wire your lines run your lines in and run it out, and then put your the map sensor on the very last one, runs back in. It's a different system. Let me turn the light on real quick. All right, so now you can see. So the day I come in here before I went to the track, I said, well, I'll go through and hook it up like that and just try and see how it does. So I run this new line here into here. I run this from here to there. I need to change this fitting out because it's leaking a little bit. But I still have the low side. It is wide in. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to come through here and I'm going to take and just feed it one here. And I'm going to feed it over to there and see if that'll help some of the boost creep issues that we got going on. With these two wastegates, we shouldn't be having creep like we have. Or at least on the E85, we never had, with one gate, we never had no creep. It done exactly what I told it to do. So I'm going to go through and straighten that out. And that way we can test it and see how it does. I got a guy I'm buying some, the LT motor. There's actually the heads for it over there. I'm buying an LT motor off of him. He's going to bring it. I'm going to take the coils. I'm going to put the LT coils on here, which are nothing but LS3 coils anyways. So that should take our breaking up issue at higher boost. But right now, with dig or die, we're not going to need all that. Like I said, it went 123 on a little bit of boost the other day. We probably need just a tad bit more mile an hour than that. So we're in the area of where we need to be at. So it needs a tad bit more boost. So we still have probably 10 more pounds. No, we got about 14 more pounds. We got double the boost that we could throw at the car before it even had any breaking up issue on the dyno. So it started breaking up about 29 pounds of boost or whatever. It made 940. The setup made 940 on 29 pounds. It made good power before that, and then about 940 is where it started doing. But we have also this same setup. It made 11 with E85 and air to water and that. It made 1176 on E85 on, I can't remember, I think it was somewhere around 35 pounds of boost. It went 155 mile an hour and 8 on 35 pounds of boost. So I know without an intercooler on here, the air is hotter. So therefore M1 is good, but I think to a certain level, I still believe the E85 might be better. I think E85, the air fuel E85 that you run on that, I think a certain level in power, E85 is better per pound of boost. Like, I don't think this setup will make the power that setup makes at 35 pounds of boost. You know what I mean? Like, I think what that car run on 35 pounds of boost, I think this setup will probably take 40 pounds, 40, 41 pounds maybe, if I had to guess. It might not, but I still think that right there is the ticket with the E85 in the car. Even though the car's lighter now, I think it's just going to take more power to get it there. So let's clean the shop up. Let's go through and get the cooler lines run. Get on that. Ride with us. So I took a break from cleaning for a minute. I decided to come in here and work on old Honey Badger's transmission. Y'all check out Honey Badger's channel. Y'all know they done kicked him off his big channel and his second big channel. So now he's on his third big channel. But this is his transmission. We had some metal in the pan, which is really normal of a trans brake. So like if you buy a transmission and you pull the pan off of it and there's some gray material in it, do not panic. If it's a 400, don't panic. If it's been put on a trans brake, it's going to have some kind of metal. It's going to have some stuff in the pan on it. You know, like the clutches on his, if you look, first gear didn't have no kind of marks. Second gear and high gear had a little bit of heat in them, but as you can tell, the frictions are still there. So, like I said, if you pull a pan out and you see a little bit of metal in it, it's very, 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 very common for a 400 to have something in the pan. Just the heat, letting go of the brake, no clutches, material, rubbing the steels, it's going to have some kind of metal in it. That's why I always recommend that when you put a filter on a 400, that you get one that has the metal element. You turn around and get one that has the paper element inside of it, you'll burn it up because it'll get clogged up. It'll get plugged off. It'll burn up pretty quick with a trans brake. It's just the law of the land. But while I'm talking about that, last night I was on Facebook and there's this local guy that does some racing at Shady Side. Ended up, he had tore his power glide up. It had cracked the case on it. And a very common issue with a power glide is the case cracking from too much line pressure. At the line pressure on reverse circuit, it'll crack the side of the case. I don't know if that was his issue, but I seen him tag a guy named Anton Morgan. Anton, when I clicked on his name, I realized that he runs a company called Lightning Quick Glides. Just so happened, another local guy, Little Mountain Mike, was telling me one day that he had a transmission, had some issues, and he took it up there to a place called Lightning Quick Glides in up towards Morganton, and the dude has cases and gear sets and about anything you need for a glide this guy has in stock, and that he done him right, hooked him up on the price, and he helped him out as much as he could and all that. So all that relayed back to myself, and I said, well, heck, I'm gonna add this dude. So I added him on Facebook. As soon as I add him, he jumps in my mailbox, and he's like, man, I've been watching your YouTube channel. He was like, I'm glad that we're Facebook friends now. And I'm like, well, I heard you do good work, and I try to support local businesses that do quality work. So I try giving people shout outs. So if you got a power glide and you got a stock case or aftermarket case, you're wanting to get it built, rebuilt, or built up, look up Lightning Quick Glides. I'm going to drop the link right as this video ends. I'm going to put a picture of his contact info. And like I said, if you got anything, any questions, hit him up. The man knows what he's talking about, so hit him up. He knows what he's doing. But let's get back to it. Like I said, Badger's transmission, this dude likes silicone like I like butt connectors. God, that freaking pan right there where he siliconed it, man, I freaking fought to get that thing loose. I really thought I was going to break the case trying to chisel that thing to get it to break loose of it. But we're going to go in here. I'm going to get everything cleaned up, put some more brake cleaner on it, spray it up in here, and get all this silicone broke loose and all that. We're going to rebuild it and see if we can get it back together for him. Even though this piston, the seal on it ain't bad, it's always better to replace them while you're in there. I mean, if it's a fresh transmission, you can get by with it, but sometimes what I always do is rub to feel for roughness. If you get somewhere where you got a little rough spot on it, you better ought to replace it, because if it don't, it's going to tear. So these seals ain't bad, but we're still going to replace them. So all you do is just, well, you don't stick it down in there. Flip it up. It's hard to do one hand. All you do is grab it, pull them off, and match one up, give me another one. So just a little tip on these 400s. When you do them, you can cap that hole off. I weld it up and grind it down. We also need to get in here and get rid of these rings, because when the pressure gets jacked up on it and stuff, these rings will tear up around the edge. That's where you get some of that metal from, is these right here get burrs on them. So we're going to take these and change these out for Teflon. I should have done it last time. I didn't even think about it until I was in here looking. I was like, man, I can't believe I missed that. So we got to take all these off, unlock them. Another tip, when you drop this down in here, if you look, that has a slant. See that tooth on it? And that has a slant. So that's how you line it and locate it to make sure that your center support bolt is lined up. We got to brake clean that. But the lined up is because it has a slant here and a slant there, and that's how you do it without having to second guess yourself. So we ended up putting 4 clutches in the intermediate. It come out to measure right a hair under 1 inch, like 9.98 thousandths or something like that. Went ahead and put a case saver in here, because if you look, see how thin these are? 400s are bad about going through, and sorry, Nikki was calling, but 400s are bad about blowing these lugs off the case, and when they do, the case is pretty much jumped. Badger's last time had actually jumped. It kicked it out. I didn't get it locked all the way in, or something happened and it come loose. So I made him buy a case saver this time. That way we don't even run into that. But like I said, we got play. We're good. So he bought the tree killer valve body right here. So I got to go through and install a new connector right there in the case. That way you got a good connection there. Got a couple odds and ends from the new bolts. Got some new springs here. We got to install one for reverse. There you go. I think these are high gear return springs. I'll have to look it up on the instructions. But this is it. Look at that. Blang blang. There it is. Now I got to put my filter on it. Then I got to start putting my springs on my direct drum and all that, and get all that back together, and we'll be and check out my seals and have this thing together here shortly.